The last video I posted was called A Complete Shakespeare Code by God, Edward de Vere, and the Rosicrucians. In it I showed 3 sets of codes, each with the same message 3 times. God, Vere, Rosy Cross. A fellow researcher, Chris Johnson, who posts videos under the name Nobody Oxfordian, agreed with the findings, except he suggested that the message should be God, Vere, Gold, Rosy Cross. In the video, I do show one example of Gold Rosy Cross, but it was the only one I'd found at the time. So I went back and Chris was right. Now if you haven't seen the last video, please do so to understand how the codes work. The methods in the last video are still the same, except now the word gold is added to the message, which I think makes them even more interesting, and further proves that what people think are printing mistakes were actually put there by design. In heraldry, the color for gold is the French word or, spelled O-R, which comes from the Latin word aurum, A-U-R-U-M. In Spanish and Italian, it's oro, spelled O-R-O. And an abbreviation for gold, like the word God, is the letter G. In the video, I show a Kairos symbol on the cover of the sonnets that Alexander Waugh has in one of his videos. It points to letters spelling G de Vere, and later I figured out that the P and T are the Greek letters rho tau, altogether spelling out what I thought was the message, God de Vere Rosy Cross. Look again, and to the left of the middle line that spells rho tau are the letters O-R, the French word or, meaning gold. Here it is with all the other text removed. We read the letters to the left of the dots. Beginning with the first dot on the bottom, there's the letter G to its left. Diagonally across is another dot, and to the left of it are the letters D-E, beginning the name de Vere. The middle line is drawn from the rho character down to the dot with a T or tau and the word or to its left, or meaning gold. God, de Vere, or rho tau. God, de Vere, Gold, Rosy Cross. Next, the byline spells 2 anagrams. In Waugh's video, he explains how GT stands for God, T or tau stands for ox, and unscrambled, the byline reads, by God and Oxford Earl. That's the God and Vere part of the message. The byline is 17 letters and has 3 dots or points that abbreviate words or names. In the last video I explained that using gematria, where letters are equal to numbers, 17 is equal to R and 3 is equal to C, initials for Rosy Cross. Again, the points abbreviate names or words, and when we count the words of the decoded byline, counting each abbreviated letter as a word, there are 7 words total. It starts with the word by, then G, which is abbreviated and counted as 1 word, followed by T, also abbreviated and counted as 1 word, the word and, then T, which is abbreviated and counted as 1, followed by Ford, then Earl. Altogether, 7 words. Using gematria, 7 is equal to the letter G. In addition to God, G is also an abbreviation for gold. So the byline is 7 words comprised of 17 letters and 3 points. 7, 17, and 3 are equal to the letters GRC, initials for Gold Rosy Cross. Like so many of the other codes, this was very cleverly done. The byline also spells a second anagram. This was the one Gold Rosy Cross message I'd figured out before, but at the time had no idea they would all include the word gold. Unscrambled, the line reads T, G, Eld, Rosy T, B, and Dare. T is a cross and stands for God. Eld means old, and with the letter G spells gold. Rosy T is Rosy Cross, and in Italian, andare means to go, which in Spanish is ir. B and V have the same pronunciation in Spanish, and when the byline's translated, it reads God, Gold, Rosy Cross, Vere. So 3 times on the cover we get the same message. The Cairo symbol points to G de Vere or Rotau, God de Vere, Gold, Rosy Cross. Unscramble the byline and it spells by God and Oxford Earl. It's comprised of 7 words, 17 letters, and 3 points. 7, 17, and 3 are equivalent to the letters G, R, C. Unscramble the byline again and translate it. It spells God, Gold, Rosy Cross, Vere. Next are the double tau initials, or 2 T's, on the cover, the dedication, and at the start of Sonnet 122. Each set of initials has a letter T that's a different shape from the other, and they're printed in a way so that they resemble more than one letter. In the last video, I explained how we get the initials GT and Rotau for God and Rosy Cross, and how TT then stands for Vere. It turns out that the letters for the Gold Cross are here as well. The capital letter G that spells GT for God is also a lowercase g, GT for Gold Cross. If you can't see it, pause the screen until you do. The initials on the Sonnet's cover are GT for God and lowercase gt for Gold Cross. Held up to a light, they're Rotau for Rosy Cross, and they're 2 T's for Vere. The same thing is going on with the dedication initials. They're 2 T's printed to resemble more than one letter. Reading them left to right, they're the Greek letters gamma tau or GT for Gold Cross. They're also a lowercase r and t for Rosy Cross and 2 T's again for Vere. So now we have to find God. In the last video, I explained how the crossbars of both letter T's are shortened. The T on the left is bent sharply downward, making the letter appear not only as a Greek gamma, but also a lowercase r. The thing is, the T on the right also has a shortened crossbar. If you can't see it, pause the screen. The crossbar on the letter on the right isn't bent downward like the one on the left, but the crossbars on both letters are shortened. This is because, just like the first letter, the second letter T is also a Greek gamma, or letter G. Read right to left, it's gamma tau, this time for God. This explains why the letter on the right also has a shortened crossbar, so that it too can be read as a Greek gamma. Just like with the cover, the letters GT appear in 2 different ways so that the initials can stand for God and Gold Cross. If you've ever looked at the Sonnet's dedication initials and wondered why the 2 letter T's have the left side of their crossbars shortened and why one is bent downwards, it's so that they can be read as God, Vere, Gold Cross, and Rosy Cross. Sonnet 122 is the only sonnet that begins with double letters, 2 T's that are the third set of double tau initials. Like with the other initials, these are printed to resemble more than one letter. This becomes apparent when, just like with the cover, the page is held up to a light. Reading them right to left, the large letter is a Greek gamma followed by T or tau. Like with the dedication initials, this right to left reading of the letters stands for God. Here they're the beginning of the third set of codes, which are also read right to left like Hebrew, and we'll look at momentarily. In the last video I show how, in addition to the large letter T being a Greek gamma, it's also a lowercase r, just like with the dedication initials. Now when the two letters at the beginning of Sonnet 122 are held up to a light and read like Hebrew right to left, but then written down like Greek or Latin left to right, they spell lowercase rt for Rosy Cross. Also, like I already showed, the large letter is a Greek gamma or G. Read right to left, the letters are gamma tau or GT meaning God. Read right to left, but then written down left to right, they're also GT, letters for Gold Cross. Just like with the initials on the cover and dedication, the two T's beginning Sonnet 122 are printed so they can be read as GT two different ways, for God and Gold Cross, RT for Rosy Cross, and two T's for Vere. This is why each letter of the initials is in a different shape from the one next to it. The third set of codes start with the two T's at the beginning of Sonnet 122. Like I just showed, when the page is held up to a light and read right to left, the two T's are gamma tau, meaning God. I explained this in the last video, so forgive me for not going over all the details again here. Reading right to left, the sonnet numbers and catchword or, which are printed with dots or points, use gematria values that, when everything's figured out, spell GT, Yihi or, Ro Ki. The first part of the message is Hebrew, the second part Greek, with both sharing the catchword or. Yihi or is Hebrew for fiat lux, meaning let there be light, and Ro Ki are initials for Rosy Cross, Ki spelled Ki for reasons I explained in the video. The message reflects Genesis chapter 1 verse 3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. It's a three-part sentence equivalent to God, Vere, and Rosy Cross, also explained in the video. Okay, now looking back at the code when the gematria values are figured out, notice the letters at the end of Yihi or and the beginning of Ro Ki. Together they spell oro, and in Italian and Spanish, oro, O-R-O, is the word for gold. It's like with the word key. Although it's spelled K-I, it's pronounced the exact same way as the Greek letter X. Again, I explained why it's K-I in the last video. So in between Yihi or and Ro Ki, we have letters pronounced oro, the Italian and Spanish word for gold. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light is equivalent to GT, Yihi or, oro, Ro Ki, God, Vere, Gold, Rosy Cross. The code then goes from using gematria to another Kabbalistic method called Notaricon, where we take the first letters from each sonnet that has a sonnet number printed with a point, and the catchword or, the only catchword printed with a point. We get the letters I-F-O-R-S-T. In the video, I show how these 6 letters spell 3 different anagrams. First O, or first omega, meaning first and last, is a way God refers to himself as in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. The letters also spell 4 T's, meaning 4-letter T's, which stand for Edward de Vere for reasons explained by Alexander Watt in his videos and a few of mine. And lastly, the letters spell F Rosy T, which is short for Fratres Rosicrucis, or Brothers of the Rose Cross. So now we have to figure out how to spell gold, or Brothers of the Gold Cross, with these 6 letters. And I gotta say, this took me forever. And by forever, I mean a couple days of staring at these letters, leaving them alone for a little while, going back to them, researching words on the internet, attending to responsibilities while going over the letters in my head, until eventually I got it. It's apparent there are the letters OR, which is the French word for gold. It comes from the Latin word aurum, spelled A-U-R-U-M, and there's the variant ARI, spelled A-U-R-I, meaning of gold. This anagram uses the Latin word auri, but spells it with the French word for gold. When it's unscrambled, it's F-S-O-R-I-T, which is an abbreviation for Frères Gold Croix, meaning Brothers of the Gold Cross. I knew the anagram was going to be similar to F Rosy T, Fratres Rosicrucis, but I kept thinking the F was going to be for the French word fraternity. I finally realized that the letters FS are an abbreviation for Frères, meaning brothers, and found examples where this is the case. Then, using the French word for gold, or, it spells the Latin word auri, A-U-R-I, as O-R-I. Lastly, T is a cross, which in French is croix. Incredibly, the letters at the beginning of the marked sonnet numbers and the catchword or can spell 4 anagrams. First O, meaning first and last, or God. 4 T's, which is Edward de Vere. Brothers of the Gold Cross, and Brothers of the Rose Cross. I explained in the previous video that this is another way of saying God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God is the first and last. Edward de Vere, the 4th T, is a light bringer, equivalent to the command, "Let there be light." And the Gold and Rosy Cross is the light that illuminates the world. All that began with Sonnet 122. Reading right to left, the gematria value spelled Yihi Or Oro Ro Ki, followed by the 4 anagrams. Continuing from Sonnet 122, going through the pages right to left, we see a dot beneath the word eclipses, and 2 more dots where they shouldn't be on the other side of the page, above the word times in Sonnet 58, and in Sonnet 60 in a sentence that should not have a period at the end of it. In the video, I explained that this sentence, "Nativity once in the main of light," is a reference to the nativity of Jesus, or God. The dot over the letter S in times is a clue to ignore the letter beneath the dot and read the remaining letters of the word, right to left, spelling E-M-I-T, emit, which means to send out of or out from. Eclipses means darkness, and the dot beneath it is also printed next to the letters P-T, which stand for the Greek letters Rho Tau or RT. Nativity once in the main of light is referring to God. Out of darkness is referring to Edward de Vere as the light bringer, explained in the prior video, and the letters Rho Tau stand for the Rosy Cross initials RT. And it's with these initials that we find the letter for gold. Beneath eclipses, next to the Rho Tau letters, the dot has been placed right in the middle of 4 letters. P or Rho in Greek, T or Tau, S and G. Another name that the Fraternity of the Gold and Rosy Cross went by was the Society of the Gold and Rosy Cross, and that's what we have here. SG Rho Tau, initials for Society Gold Rosy Cross. That's the 3rd message from the 3rd and last set of God Vere Rosy Cross codes. And like with the other 2 messages in this set of codes, it's equivalent to Genesis 1:3. Nativity once in the main of light is God. Out from or emit from darkness is light coming from darkness, meaning let there be light, which is Vere. And then, and there was light is the metaphorical light of the Society of the Gold and Rosy Cross. This is the complete Shakespeare code that I meant for the previous video. 3 times on the cover, God Vere Gold Rosy Cross, found by drawing a Chi-Rho symbol, and twice as an anagram in the byline. The double tau initials on the cover, dedication, and beginning Sonnet 122 are printed to resemble GT in 2 different ways for God and Gold Cross. RT for Rosy Cross, and 2 T's for Vere. Then from Sonnet 122, reading right to left, all the dots that people think are printing mistakes lead to 3 more sets of God, Vere, Gold, Rosy Cross messages. And it's here we learn that this reflects the Bible verse Genesis 1:3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Encoding 9 God, Vere, Rosy Cross messages is extraordinary enough, I think. Including the word gold as part of the message makes it even more so, and further demonstrates that this did not happen by chance. A couple videos ago, in video 54, I offered an explanation for why some pages in the sonnets are printed with punctuation following the name Shakespeare's along the top of the page. To save time, I'm not going to go over it again here, but I don't think these are printing mistakes, and I explain how these lead to Edward de Vere cipher 1740. Please see the video for details. There's another poem in the quarto that follows the sonnets, A Lover's Complaint. Similar to the sonnets, there's punctuation that appears on some of the pages that's missing from others. The word complaint along the top of the page has a period after it, but not on every page. Like with the sonnets, I don't think these dots, points, or periods are printing mistakes, so what are they doing here? There's a little page counting code in the sonnets where if you start at the first page and count, Sonnet 40 is on page 17. 1740 Edward de Vere cipher. Notice how the first line on the page is eternal numbers to outlive long date. Poems are also called numbers, and this line is referring to verse that will live forever. But I think eternal numbers may also be referring to 1740. There's actually more to show on this page, but that'll be for another video. Alright, so by counting the pages, count 17, there's Sonnet 40. I think there's another page counting code in A Lover's Complaint. This is the last page, and we count it as page 1. We turn the pages right to left, and complaint has a dot or period on page 2. Turn it again, there's one on page 4, and one on page 6. And then after that, there aren't any more that appear with complaint on the top of the page like that. So right to left, from the end of the poem, complaint is printed with punctuation on pages 2, 4, and 6. What I think 2, 4, 6 is referring to is the 24th of June, which is Midsummer's Day, the Nativity of John the Baptist, and Edward de Vere's date of death, according to history. Another combination of this number is 624. We find it with the sonnet's dedication, which is printed in 3 inverted triangles of 6, 2, and 4 lines. John Rolette figured out that if we count every 6th, 2nd, and 4th word, we get the message, "These sonnets all by Ever the 4th T." The word ever is sometimes used with the Shakespeare codes. It's an anagram of Vere and also spells E Vere. And I already mentioned that the 4th T is a reference to Edward de Vere. If you want to encode this date into a page count, it'll have to be 246, because the second page always comes before the 4th, and the 4th before the 6th. I've shown that the dots after the sonnet numbers 9, 10, 18, 122, and the catchword or are not printing mistakes, and neither are the ones on the pages with sonnets 58 and 60. And a couple videos ago I showed how the name Shakespeare's, followed by punctuation on certain pages, leads to de Vere's cipher 1740. So I think the dots here in A Lover's Complaint were also printed with intent and reveal Edward de Vere's 24th of June date of death. There was no formal announcement when Oxford died, and he was buried supposedly in Hackney 12 days after on July the 6th. Another way of writing July 6 is 7-6. I find this a little suspect because 7-6 or 76 is equal to 4 T's. The gematria value of the letter T is equal to 19. 4 times 19 or 4T is 76. A while back I figured out that the letters spelling the word Oxford also equals 76. A couple videos ago I talked about how the fourth T may have to do with John the Baptist and how Edward de Vere was a light bringer similar to John. If the fourth T is a title connecting de Vere to John the Baptist, I think it's a strange coincidence that de Vere happens to die on the celebrated day of John's nativity and is buried on the month and day equivalent to 4T. Something else curious is that later that year in 1604, Kepler's supernova was first recorded seen by Ilario Altobelli on October 9th. A great conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars had been calculated for the day before on October 8th, and this conjunction would have had astrological significance for people of the day. Rosicrucians claim that the tomb of their founder, the legendary Christian Rosenkreuz, was found and opened that year, depicted in this image. I've read that the opening of the tomb coincided with the supernova, but also with the Great Conjunction. Now what I find interesting is that Christian Rosenkreuz is said to have lived to be 106 years old. Edward de Vere is said to have died on June 24th, which is exactly 106 days from the predicted date of the conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. At the time the sonnets were published, the supernova wasn't predicted, but the conjunction had been for October 8th. So de Vere dies, and 106 days later, the same number of years Rosenkreuz is said to have lived, there's a predicted date for a great conjunction of planets, and, depending on the source, it coincides with the opening of Rosenkreuz's tomb. I'm wondering if there's a death and rebirth connection in the stories of Edward de Vere and Christian Rosenkreuz. Did one affect the other? The reason why Chris Johnson suggested that all the messages I went over earlier should read Gold and Rosy Cross is because the de Vere family colors are or and gules, or gold and red. Was Edward de Vere the founder of this particular branch of the Rosicrucians, the name Gold and Rose reflecting his family's heraldic colors? Or was it the other way around, meaning that he recognized his family colors in the name of an order that already existed, possibly interpreting it as Providence? Whatever the case, by applying methods mentioned in John Dee's Monus Hieroglyphica, I've been able to show that the name Gold and Rosy Cross was encoded into Shakespeare's Sonnets, and it's apparent that Edward de Vere was held in high regard by the order. I feel certain these codes are 100,000,000% authentic, and if you have doubts or need something clarified, please leave a comment and I'll try my best to help you understand. Thanks to Chris Johnson, aka Nobody Oxfordian, for suggesting that gold would be in these messages, and to Alexander Waugh, whose videos I first saw with information about the sonnets that helped lead me to the discovery of the messages. And thank you for watching.